Hello everyone, I'm here today with guitarist John Jorgenson. I'll kind of let you introduce yourself, but I've been paying attention to his music career since I was in high school, so over 20 years. I used to drag my family out, like a couple hours of driving to go see him play and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where was the first spot?
I saw you in Newcastle, California at a place called, I think it was called Constable Jack's.
Wow, okay, that was
Yeah,
that was early on.
Yeah, it was early on, but you were still kind of the only guy doing it then.
Yeah.
One of them. There's you.
So like 2003 or 4 or something like that?
2003 or 2004. You had the band was completely different than who you had. You had the guitar player playing an alternate tuning. I forget whose name.
Doug Maddox.
Doug Maddox. Yeah, that's
playing
right.
Carl Crest tuning.
Yeah, and then you had the
Dick Hardwick.
the comedian playing the drums.
Yep.
And
And probably Charlie Warren on the bass, a really good slapper.
It was Charlie Warren on bass, and then I think Stephen Dudash on violin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was like the first. That was like the first quintet that I put together.
Yeah. It was an amazing show. I remember, but it was also I remember. Sorry, I lost my train of thought, but I remember going there and see you play and dragging my family 2 hours of driving.
So, but how did you come? I know it's supposed to be interviewing me, but how did you find Gypsy Jazz?
I found it. I was just going online, and in the U.S. there was Paul Mailing doing it.
Yeah.
And then the other band was, everyone mentioned John Jorgenson, so I was just always checking the internet, saying when is John Jorgenson playing elsewhere.
But how did you even become interested in that style?
My dad was playing fiddle in a gypsy jazz band, and they played a music festival. And then since then, I was just into it. I didn't even play guitar when I saw him play.
So just the energy of the music.
Yeah. So I was 15, and then I started doing the whole Django thing.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's funny because we're here at the Freight and Salvage in Berkeley for a celebration of Django's. What would his birthday be?
I think it's the 26th.
Yeah, and it would be his 100 and whatever. He was born in 1910, right?
Yeah, 1910. So
114 birthday this year.
Yeah.
And so this is the last day of the festival, and my quintet is playing along with Simon Planting on bass, Casey Driscoll on violin, Rick Reed on percussion, and John Jarvis on piano. Rick's been the longest time member, and he's he probably came in maybe 2006 or something like that.
Okay.
So he's been a long time.
So almost 20 years.
Yeah, which is that in itself is crazy.
It's like a.
But also in the bill, you mentioned Paul Mailing in his Hot Club of San Francisco. Well, if you kind of rewind back to 1979 or 1980 or so, that's kind of when I discovered Django. And I was working at Disneyland at that time, and one of the other guys in my band also was into it. And even before we hired him, he replaced Dick Hardwick when Dick left to be a comedian.
Okay.
So originally Dick was the fourth member of that band. So when we replaced him, we needed someone who could play bluegrass guitar and sing, and someone who could play washboard. And we figured the bluegrass guitar and singing was more important than the washboard. So we hired Raul, and it was just a bonus that he was already into gypsy jazz and he had a Selmer guitar. So that was like, we're getting him in the band.
Probably one of the only Selmer guitars in the country at the time.
Probably it was the first one that I'd ever seen that was like this style with a 14 fret and oval hole.
Yeah.
Another one of my friends at the time had a 12 fret D hole with a sound chamber in it. And that came, I think it came through Greg Rich, maybe, who's kind of become a famous banjo engraver and artist over the years.
Yeah.
He was into it too, and we had a friend named Brad Roth who was a banjo player, and so I think it might have belonged to Brad at the time, but so here were these two Selmer guitars in Orange County, in 1981 or whatever it was, and I was on the lookout for mine, I wanted to get one, and I took the borrowed D-hole model to a rehearsal. I was playing with a band called Mood Indigo, and they were basically a vocal trio. It was John Reynolds, And he was playing either a Epiphone Deluxe or a National 12 string. And then there was a guy named Casey McGill that played rhythm ukulele, and David Jackson played bass.
Okay.
And they sang in three-bar harmony just like amazing.
Yeah.
So sometimes they would like to augment their band and have a horn section, and they all loved the Quintet of the High School Friends too, so they liked to have a couple of rhythm guitarists, playing along. So I was playing with them on that guitar, and John Reynolds told me, "Hey, I saw one like that at Fred Wallace's at Westwood Music, but I didn't think it was a real one because it didn't have the big crying mouth. It just had this small oval hole." I went, "Okay, that's the one that I want." And I said, "Well, it can't still be there." I said, "How long ago was that?" It's like a year and a half or so. I'm like, "It's not going to be there." He said, "You should ask him because it's not out on display, it's in the back and you have to ask for it." Okay. And so I went to my credit union, I took out a loan, and I called them to see if they had it. They said, yeah, they did. And so we usually got off like at 4:45 on a Friday afternoon in Anaheim.
Yeah.
So we kind of cut our set short so that we could get up to Westwood before 6 o'clock closing.
Which could be a brutal drive.
Exactly, crazy traffic. And I called ahead and I said, "I want to look at this guitar. Would you stay open if we don't get there quite in time?" So anyway, we got up there, and Raoul's guitar was one of the very last 3 or 4 Summers made. So it had a rosewood neck, 889, I think.
889, so they made almost 900 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so those later ones had, I believe, a rosewood neck, so they're really neck heavy, very orange kind of top, a bit of thicker top even. So anyway, I saw this earlier one was like 574. I didn't. No one knew anything about these guitars then.
Yeah.
But obviously it was earlier, so in other words, older.
Yeah.
And it was different. I was like, "Oh, I don't know if I like this one. It's not like the one that I saw, but I thought, well, and the frets were, it looked like somebody took a file this way, so you'd go like, it was really bad, and a lot of cracks in the face. But I just thought, when am I ever going to see another one of these? I better just buy it.
Yeah.
And it has turned out to be a really, really sweet guitar, like one of the best ones people say.
Yeah, and you've used that on lots of recordings.
Yeah.
I remember, because I now actually remember where I discovered you was actually, it was Flat Picking Guitar Magazine.
Oh, okay.
There's articles with Raoul, and there was stuff with you in there too, like you had an album release, and there was that Head in the Clouds movie that you had
that's
the
right.
soundtrack for.
That was 2003, and I used that guitar. Well, I mean, even back then, it was the only guitar I had like that, so I played it.
Yeah.
In fact, our band had 3 original Selmers, and we would play them out on the street in Disneyland. We didn't have anything else to use. So, and at one point, they sent us to Japan, and we were nervous about taking our good instruments, so we didn't take them. I took an Epiphone arch top and took something else anyway, but while we were over there, we found copies, and we ended up buying about 6 of them. Raoul bought the first one. We went back to the store. Can we get another one? Then Doug saw it, and then can we get another one? And then I think, John Reynolds is going to want one, so we got one for him, and we got one for Paul Mailing. So,
was this like the Ibanez remake?
They weren't branded with anything, so they were sort of gray market. And if we asked who made these guitars, they wouldn't tell us.
Yeah.
No brand, nothing anywhere. So we found out, years later, they were called CSL. So we found these copies that were made by the English company CSL.
Yeah.
Maurice Summerfield was friends with Mario McAferry when he was in London, you know.
Yeah.
So they were pretty good, you know. I mean, and plus they were the only thing.
What year was this again?
This is 1983.
83. So
yeah.
There was nothing.
There was nothing.
Yeah.
So Raoul was friends with Paul Mailing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he sent one up to him, and he told him about what strings to use and what kind of pick, and the knowledge that we had, which was not very much, but we were trying, like, importing the Hot Club News magazine from Germany.
Okay, yeah.
We could look at the pictures, but it was all in German, so we didn't know what it said. And sometimes we import some, like, Borelli or the Foray Brothers, or Wasso, you know, whatever we could find. You know, and studying the photographs. And there was a guy in Pasadena that was a jazz film collector, and one night he was showing the film, you know, it'd be, you might see like Cab Calloway or Duke Ellington films or Fats Waller.
Yeah.
And 1 week is the guy, oh, he's going to show Django Reinhardt. You know, we lost our mind, you know. And it was the footage from the train car from that movie that he was playing. So, I mean, there was a couple little places where he's like in sync with what's the soundtrack, but, you know, we were thrilled to see that.
Just to see anything, you see that, the hand and the...
Because no one, you know, there wasn't that Je t'aimerai video to see.
Yeah.
So there was no video. So that was the first time we saw anything of what, you know, what it kind of looked like, you know.
Yeah.
And, you know, as you know now, in Europe, there's this tradition, and people would teach each other and get together and all that. But in America, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
So we kind of felt like archaeologists.
Yeah.
Trying to learn whatever we could from the pictures and reading everything and finding, you know, listening. And so during that time, we put together, you know, we did play at Disneyland. We played our Selmers. It wasn't classic gypsy jazz, but some we would play some Django tunes, but we'd also sing like the Boswell Sisters and that kind of stuff. But we didn't have a violin player, so it wasn't like the
Paul Shalaski was not playing with you then, or was he just playing guitar then?
I had met him when I came up to the Grass Valley Bluegrass Festival, but he was still living up here.
Okay.
And so he actually replaced me in that band when I left many years later.
Okay.
But at this time, it was just us. We didn't know. We met a couple of guys down there that played violin, older guys, and I tried to do something, put something together, and there was just no places to play. No one was interested in this music. There wasn't like a circuit or venues or anything. So I could see like even like trad jazz festivals, Dixieland festivals, you could maybe sneak in like as a novelty act or something. Yeah. So I just realized that's just too much of an uphill battle to try to make this my career.
Right.
So I just consciously went, okay, I love it. I'm going to keep playing it, but it's not going to be my career. It's going to be my hobby, music.
Yeah.
And so when I was leaving Disneyland, and I didn't figure I'd ever play this music again. I wanted to do an album just to be like, look what I used to do.
Yeah, this is like a memory or... You know,
yeah. And that album was after you gone. And
I had that record actually. I think I found that in my dad's collection too.
Oh, okay.
Like, yeah.
Well, by the time I did that album, I'd met David Grisman and Daryl Anger. Yeah. So I invited them to be guests on it. And so that was when did I did it? I just did it maybe 87 or somewhere around there. And then, like I said, I still kept being into it for my own interest, and I got to go to France with other people. And whenever, you know, with other artists or other acts, and whenever I did, like, I went to France with the Helicasters. Okay. But I met up with Borelli, you know, at that time, and I played with him. I got to go to Samoa, and I met Roman there. Yeah. And so I ended up, you know, playing with him a couple different places over the years. So I still was active, but it wasn't like to try to be a career.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
And speaking of your career, like maybe you should tell people a little bit about it because I don't think some people may not realize you're like a highly sought after session guitar player.
Yeah, well, so when I left Disneyland, it was because I had formed a band with Chris Hillman called the Desert Rose Band,
Mm-hmm.
and we were starting to get hits on the radio.
Yeah.
And by the time we had our first #1 record, it was our 3rd single, I think, and that's when I quit my day job. And I went full on with that band, and we got a record deal, and we toured, and we were on television.
Yeah.
We ended up having like 10 top 10 singles and 5 #1 singles, and what ended up happening is our producers started using me for other acts.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I became a session player.
Okay.
You know, they're like, oh, we like your sound. Can you play for so and so?
Yeah, yeah.
So then I did a lot of session work, and I left the Desert Rose Band in 1991 and moved to West Hollywood. And at that time I was going back and forth to Nashville, still doing a lot of sessions.
Yeah.
And also working in some television shows and some movies, and
Mm-hmm.
and I had started the Helicasters, I think, by that time too.
Okay.
So it was a really rich, varied life.
Yeah,
you know?
lots doing everything. Really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's great.
And
you know.
and then in the Helicasters' first album came out in '93, and we won Album of the Year from Guitar Player magazine,
Oh
which
wow.
was really nice.
Yeah, that's.
And
I haven't heard of the magazine, but.
yes. So that it was never supposed to be a serious thing, but we had to get serious. You know, we were just going to do one show for fun together, but it sort of turned into something.
Yeah.
And so then about the time when our second album was about to come out, Elton John called and asked me to come and tour with him. So it was supposed to be like again, like not a full-time thing, just like one tour.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be an 18-month world tour. Well, that tour ended up being only 9 months, but then he asked me to stay, and then that ended up being like 6 years of recording and touring and performing with him. And during that time, I ended up playing with so many other people, Sting and Billy Joel, and George Michael,
and recording with them too.
Yeah, all different. Yeah, anyway, I say jokingly, but it's true. Like artists from Luciano Pavarotti to the Spice Girls, you know.
Yeah.
So that lasted till like 2000, 2001, and then I started doing like an electric solo thing. That the Helicasters ended as well then, and then all during those years I wanted to do a second Gypsy Jazz album, because I'd got to go to France a few times, and I felt like I learned a lot more about it. And I had written some more pieces, and so I started working on it, but it took me a long time. And then in 2003 or so, I got offered to recreate Minor Swing and Blue Drag for a film taking place in Paris in that time period. And then I also got the opportunity to be Django on stage.
Yeah. Right.
And so that really spurred me on to finish that album. Because I thought, well, this is going to really, really help this album.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was called Franco-American Swing, and certainly like all the guitar magazines really jumped on that I was in a movie with Charlize Theron and whatever. So anything to write about something sexy, they're gonna write about it.
Yeah.
And so I put together the quintet that you mentioned to start promoting that album.
Yeah,
and I met Nick Lair. Actually playing a house concert at Roger Lynn's house, the guy who invented the Lynn drum.
Okay.
And Nick said, Raul was playing with me at that time, and Nick said, I want you guys on every one of my festivals.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, for some reason, Raul couldn't play the first festival. He had some sort of commitment. And I said, he said, well, could you wait till next year? And I'm like, but I have this album. If I wait till next year,
You have a new album already.
I said I need to do it. I'm sorry, I don't want to. So I just kind of forged ahead, and did it. And then, little by little, as you say, there wasn't very many people doing it then. But there was an awareness through the internet.
Yeah, even then though, very little. Like I remember just every day, just like going and searching on Google
Like
and Yahoo,
forums
just, like,
and stuff,
forums
right?
and like trying to find everything that I could.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, and imagine like, you know, that like I said, that, you know, years before.
I know.
There
I
was
think about that. Like,
nothing, you know. I mean,
what would you do? Like,
Raul was very good at finding stuff.
Mhm.
He was really good, so I was lucky to know him.
yeah.
But then, you know, we really started. There started to be more and more opportunities to play,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized, you know, I had to fill in my set. I couldn't just do all Django
Yeah.
material. It just was like, I think, well, at first it was just to fill it in, to have enough material. And then the audience started really responding to my original compositions.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of set me apart from all of the other acts.
Yeah.
So I just kept on with that. You know,
Yeah.
it inspired me, and I like composing.
Mm-hmm.
So eventually bringing in other instruments like the bouzouki and the clarinet and, you know, the accordion and the piano and influences from Bulgarian and Romanian and
Yeah. Yep.
flamenco and classical and
Everything.
whatever.
It's all, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
So I mean, to me, what we play now, to me, is world music.
Mm-hmm.
Not world music in the traditional reggae African
Right.
sense.
You don't have congos or anything like that.
No,
but-
it's not the African-centric
Yeah, yeah.
world music, but it has elements from
Everywhere.
all these different cultures. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just do one more question. I think probably get ready for your show and everything. He's playing the Django Reinhardt Birthday Celebration at the Freight and Salvage, the yearly event. It's been going well. It's
Yeah.
packed house.
We
and
have a
everything.
guest of Frank Vignola with us
Also big-
tonight.
Yes, the legendary.
Last time we did this, our guest was Martin Taylor.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
yeah.
then last year, Martin, Frank, and I did a series of shows together under the Great Guitars.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes.
banner.
I remember that. Yeah, yeah.
So
Was
it
it
was-
Bruce Foreman too, or no?
Well, yeah, it was Bruce Foreman on the East Coast. Frank did the dates, and
Okay.
on the West Coast, Bruce did.
Okay. All right.
So yeah.
Yeah. My last question for you, just to keep it kind of shorter. What would your advice being for someone who is trying to get into music for a living, for their career?
Well, it'd have to be make sure that you like all the elements of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you
Yeah.
only like the part of performing on stage, it's going to be pretty rough.
Yeah.
You have to like rehearsing, you have to like practicing by yourself, you have to like coming up with a set list, you have to like putting together a band or being a good band member.
Mhm.
You know, being a good band member, try to put yourself in the shoes of the guy who's putting everything together and make it easier for that person.
Yeah.
And same musically, if you're on stage, you know, if you're with an ensemble, if you're a soloist, okay, it's all about you.
Yeah.
But if you're with a group, even if you're the lead player, it's not all about you. So in order to create a vibe, you gotta try to make sure that everybody feels important and that their input is valued and their sound is good. And
Yeah.
because when that happens, then everyone plays better. They put out energy. Energy accumulates, goes to the audience, comes back. Then you can have a good show.
Yeah.
You know? So it would be that, like, you know, enjoy messing around with your instrument, enjoy the technical aspects,
Yeah.
and start performing as much as you can
Yeah.
in real situations. Like, I know that's hard for a lot of people who may not be around venues, but everybody's got churches in their area.
Mm-hmm.
They can play at church. You don't have to play a religious piece. You play instrumental. You know,
Yeah.
there's coffee houses. You play at your school. Play in front of your friends.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you can't comfortably play in front of people and put across your idea,
Yeah.
you're never going to get to move to the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
So get comfortable, like know your instrument or your voice
Yeah.
well enough. Like don't, you know,
Yeah.
because normally when you get in front of people, the worst stuff always happens. Either your voice is not as good as you want it to be, or your guitar slipped a little out of tune, or something usually goes wrong. So if you're prepared like 110, 120%, you're going to get closer to 100%
Like if you're
when things get
when you're transcribing this thing, you learn it at 120% because you're only going to be able to play it at 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Just and also look for the positivity in all of your circumstances. Don't try to compete. Don't go in there thinking that you're going to be the guy that's going to slay everybody else. Mm-hmm. Because invariably you get knocked off that pedestal.
Yeah.
And that's just how it goes. And
because there's always someone better than you, right?
Always. There's always someone faster with better tone that writes more interesting things. But you can only be, no one can be you. Mm-hmm. They can't be a better version of you.
Yeah.
And no one can synthesize all of your different, inspirations and experiences. Mm-hmm. And I think those are the things that audiences relate to, whether that's subconsciously or consciously. They feel, oh, wow, this part of this song sounds kind of painful, or wow, this is joyous, or whatever, Yeah. And that's part of the reason why blues is so popular, I think, because everybody been down.
There's no real rules. There is, but it's like kind of like it's very loose,
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's all emotion is king.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, cool. Thank you for your time. I'm looking
very
forward to your
welcome.
concert tonight, and I'll see you again, I'm sure. Yeah.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
You're very welcome.